Between the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the Western world was swept by a wave of changes so profound that they earned the name Age of Revolutions. This crucial and dynamic period redefined political, economic, and social structures. It was a time of unprecedented upheaval, sweeping away centuries of established traditions and ushering in a new era. Its radical transformations laid the foundation for the world we know today. At the heart of this tumultuous era stand three pivotal events, true drivers of change: the Industrial Revolution, the American Revolution, and the French Revolution. Each of them, with its own unique characteristics, contributed to shaping a new order, redrawing maps and mentalities. We will explore these pillars of modernity, understanding their lasting impact. The first of these great changes was the Industrial Revolution, a phenomenon that had its genesis in England. The reasons for this primacy were not accidental, but were rooted in a series of unique and convergent conditions. England enjoyed an exceptional supply of natural resources, particularly abundant deposits of coal and iron, essential to power the new machines and produce the necessary tools. Added to these resources was a solid commercial and colonial network, the fruit of centuries of maritime expansion. This network guaranteed England both a constant supply of raw materials from the colonies and large markets for finished goods. The capital accumulated from trade was reinvested in new businesses and technological innovations. These economic conditions were combined with political stability and an open mindset to innovation, which favored investment and experimentation. Efficient agriculture, thanks to enclosures, freed up labor for the nascent factories. Technical innovations were at the heart of this revolution, radically transforming production methods. Among the most significant inventions was the steam engine, perfected by James Watt. This invention not only provided a powerful and versatile source of energy, but became the very symbol of the industrial age. Applied first to mines, then to looms, and finally to transportation, it changed every aspect of production and life. Alongside this, innovations such as the mechanical loom revolutionized the textile industry, exponentially increasing production capacity. This led to a drastic reduction in production times and costs. The introduction of these machines marked the transition from artisanal, domestic production to a centralized, large scale system. It was the birth of mass production, a concept that would define modernity. This transformation also marked the birth of the factory system. Workers who previously worked in their homes or small workshops were now concentrated in large buildings. Here they worked side by side, under the supervision of foremen, following intense and often exhausting work rhythms. Machines dictated the pace, no longer the skill or will of the individual worker. Working conditions were often inhumane, characterized by long hours, unhealthy environments, and miserable wages. Safety was a virtually unknown concept, and alienation from the product of one's labor was profound. The social consequences of the Industrial Revolution were equally profound and at times dramatic. Urbanization experienced a disproportionate growth, with masses of people moving from the countryside to the cities in search of work. This phenomenon led to the emergence of overcrowded and unhealthy cities, lacking adequate infrastructure and with appalling sanitation. Working class neighborhoods quickly sprang up, often near factories. At the same time, a new and vast social class emerged, the proletariat. Composed of wage workers, this class had no property and lived by their own labor. The proletariat experienced widespread poverty and exploitation. Their struggle for better rights and living conditions would shape the following decades, laying the foundation for the trade union and political movements. While Europe was undergoing its industrial transformation, another revolutionary spark was igniting overseas. The American Revolution represented the first victorious rebellion against European colonialism. The 13 English colonies in North America, while enjoying a certain autonomy, were subject to the mother country. However, discontent was growing over a series of fiscal and trade policies. The causes of this rebellion were multiple and complex. On the one hand, there were taxes imposed by the mother country, such as the Sugar Act and the Stamp Act, perceived as unfair and lacking in representation. On the other hand, a profound desire for self government and economic freedom animated the colonists. They felt they had reached a political and social maturity that no longer required British tutelage. The culmination of these tensions was the Declaration of Independence, solemnly proclaimed on July 4, 1776. This document, drafted primarily by Thomas Jefferson, enunciated universal principles of liberty and self determination. A long and bloody war of independence followed against the British Army, one of the world's strongest powers. It was an unequal struggle, but one fueled by a resolute desire for freedom. The leadership of charismatic and strategic figures like George Washington was crucial. He was able to unite the colonial army, and with the help of European powers like France, turned the tide of the conflict. The war ended with an American victory and the official recognition of independence by Great Britain. A new state, the United States of America, was born. This victory was not only military but also ideological. It demonstrated that a people could rebel against an empire and build a new political model based on the principles of the Enlightenment. A few years later, in 1787, the American Constitution was enacted. This document represented a fundamental step in the history of constitutional law. It established a republican system based on the separation of powers into legislative, executive, and judicial branches to prevent abuse of authority. It was a model of balance between the different branches of government. The Constitution also protected individual rights through the addition of the Bill of Rights, 10 amendments that guaranteed fundamental freedoms such as speech, religion, and the press. These principles became a model of inspiration for future democracies around the world. In 1789, the revolutionary wave reached France, the cultural and political heart of continental Europe. The French Revolution was perhaps the most radical and disruptive event of this era. The French context was characterized by profound social injustices and growing oppression. The system of monarchical absolutism with Louis XVI on the throne was now perceived as anachronistic and ineffective. Added to this was a profound economic crisis aggravated by military spending and the lavishness of the court. The people, particularly the Third Estate, bore the burden of increasingly onerous taxes. Tensions erupted in a popular uprising against the king and the aristocracy. On July 14, 1789, the storming of the Bastille, a prison that symbolized royal authority, marked the beginning of the revolution. This symbolic act was not just the destruction of a prison, but the affirmation of the popular will against autocratic power. From that moment, events unfolded with unprecedented speed. The subsequent period was marked by dramatic events and impressive political acceleration. Initial reforms led to the drafting of a constitution and the declaration of the rights of man and of the citizen. However, the radicalization of the revolution culminated in the proclamation of the Republic in 1792 and the following year in the tragic execution of King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette. The monarchy had been definitively overthrown. In this climate of intense internal and external tension with European powers threatening the new republic, the period known as the Terror began. Led by figures such as Maximilien de Robespierre, it was a time of violence and repression. Thousands of people, considered enemies of the revolution, were executed, often summarily by guillotine. The revolution devoured its own children attempting to defend its ideals. Despite its bloodiest phase, the French Revolution marked the definitive end of the Ancien Régime. The abolition of feudal privileges, serfdom, and guilds unleashed social and economic energy. The revolution spread the universal ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity throughout Europe. These principles, despite their contradictions, forever changed the political and social language. His profound influence extended far beyond the borders of France, inspiring revolutionary movements and reforms in many other countries. He was a catalyst for political and social change on a continental scale. The Age of Revolutions, with its many manifestations, was a period of epochal and irreversible transformations. These upheavals were not isolated events, but profoundly interconnected, influencing one another. They marked the definitive transition from the pre-industrial and feudal world to the modern one, characterized by new economic dynamics, new forms of government, and a renewed concept of individual rights. The ideas of progress, freedom, and nation took shape in these decades. The Industrial Revolution changed the way we produce, the American Revolution changed the way we govern, and the French Revolution changed the way we conceive of society. Together, these revolutions laid the foundation for contemporary society. Their legacies, both positive and negative, continue to resonate in today's political, economic, and social debate. This pivotal era in Western history teaches us how ideas, innovation, and the will to change can forever alter the course of humanity. It was a time of disruption, but also of bold new constructions.